Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Flux, and this is General Psychology. We're in our second lecture in the development module. In our last lecture, we explored how development begins long before birth, from genetic influences to the incredible world of fetal psychology. Today, we're shifting our focus to how we understand development and something we might not think deeply about but all experience. That includes approaches to comparative development and human attachment. What can we learn about human development from studying animals? How do the bonds we form as infants shape who we become as adults? We've touched on some of these ideas before in the course, but today we're diving deeper, beyond just the basics. We'll explore not just what attachment is, but why it matters across species, cultures, and throughout life. But first, let's do a quick refresher from our last lecture. Which of the following best illustrates a gene by environment interaction? A child inherits their mother's blue eyes. B, a teenager with a genetic predisposition to anxiety develops anxiety after moving to a new stressful environment. C, a person's height is determined entirely by their genetic makeup. Or D, a child learns to play the piano from their music teacher. If you picked B, you're on point. A gene by environment interaction happens when genetic predispositions are influenced by environmental factors, like a person's tendency towards being anxious being triggered by a stressful life event. Let's do another one. Which of the following statements best captures the idea of gene by environment interactions in development? A, traits are only inherited through dominant genetic patterns. B, genetic predispositions always lead to observable traits. C, environmental factors can influence how genes are expressed, affecting development. Or D, the environment has no role in shaping biological characteristics. If you pick C, you're right on track. Gene by environment interactions mean that even if you have a genetic predisposition, it often takes environmental input to activate or shape that trait. Now let's turn our attention to today's topic, comparative development and attachment. Think about the person you turn to when life gets tough. Maybe a parent, a partner, or a close friend. That sense of security you feel? It traces back to the very first bonds you formed in life. But here's the question. What drives those bonds? Is it just about getting our needs met, like food and shelter? Or is there something deeper at play? Today, we'll explore some groundbreaking experiments that helped us to understand this. We'll also dig into some of the ethical dilemmas this has brought up, as well as some cross-cultural differences. Here's how we'll break it down. We'll start with comparative development. We'll explore Harlow's famous studies on infant monkeys and their surrogate mothers, and a few other animal examples. We'll also dive deeper into the long-term psychological effects and the ethical debates surrounding this research. We'll explore the work of Mary Ainsworth and the strange situation experiment. We'll take a look at how it influenced the way we understand the development of attachment, along with some cultural variations on this theme. Then we'll discuss attachment theory. This will bring together all of these ideas, exploring how early relationships shape not just childhood, but our adult experiences, emotional health, and even brain development. Then we'll finish up with a conclusion and some review. By the end of today's lecture, you'll have a richer understanding of attachment, not just as a concept, but as a lifelong process that influences how we connect, trust, and navigate relationships. We'll see how early bonds impact everything from mental health to romantic connections, and how our understanding of attachment has evolved over time. So let's explore the powerful bonds that shape who we are from the very beginning. We'll start with some work that was done about a century ago in the 1930s by Konrad Lorenz studying imprinting in geese. He discovered that baby geese form an immediate attachment to the first moving object they see, whether that's their mother or a human researcher. This process ensures that young animals stay close to a caregiver, increasing their chances of survival. This idea of imprinting highlights the evolutionary importance of early bonds in survival and development. But geese and humans are pretty far from each other in evolutionary terms. What about the development of primates like humans? For that, we turn to the work of psychologist Harry Harlow, where some of our deepest insights about attachment in the primate world have come. Between 1957 and 1963, Dr. Harlow wanted to test a simple but powerful question. What drives attachment? At that time, many psychologists believed that babies formed attachment to caregivers simply because they provided food. Harlow challenged this idea by placing infant rhesus monkeys in cages with two surrogate mothers. One was a wire mother that provided milk. The other was a cloth mother that provided comfort but no food. So which did the monkeys choose? When given the option, the monkeys spent far more time clinging to the soft cloth mother, even though it provided no nourishment. When they were frightened, they ran to the cloth mother for comfort, not the wire framework that fed them. Harlow's findings were revolutionary at the time. They showed that attachment isn't just about getting our basic needs met. It's about the need for emotional security and physical comfort. This concept, known as contact comfort, suggests that the warmth and security provided by a caregiver are just as important, if not more so, than food. But Harlow didn't stop there. He also studied what happened to monkeys who were completely deprived of any caregiver. No wire mother, no cloth mother, just isolation. The results were heartbreaking. Monkeys raised in isolation showed severe psychological damage. They were anxious, fearful, and had extreme difficulty forming relationships with other monkeys later in life. Some even showed self-harming behaviors or complete social withdrawal. These findings reveal something critical. Early deprivation doesn't just affect attachment in the short term. It can have lifelong consequences for emotional and social development. Harlow's work also sparked new questions about how attachment works across different species. Now, as groundbreaking as Harlow's research was, it also raised some serious ethical concerns. The monkeys in these experiments endured emotional trauma and social isolation, leading to severe psychological harm. Today, such experiments would face intense scrutiny and likely wouldn't even be allowed under current ethical guidelines for research with animals. Harlow's work forces us to grapple with an important question. How far should we go in the name of science? While his findings transformed our understanding of attachment, they came at a significant ethical cost by driving extended distress for the primates involved. Let's do a quick attention check. In Harlow's experiments, what did the monkeys prefer when given a choice? A wire mother that provided food. B, a cloth mother that provided comfort. C, neither, they showed no preference. Or D, the mother that stayed in the cage the longest. If you chose B, you're right. The monkeys overwhelmingly preferred the cloth mother, showing that the feelings of emotional security that come from comfort play a crucial role in attachment, even more so than food. Harlow's research showed us that attachment in primates is about more than just physical nourishment. But what about human relationships? How do we study attachment in human infants, and how do early bonds shape our emotional development throughout our life? To explore that, we turn to Mary Ainsworth's Strange Situation. The Strange Situation experiment was a groundbreaking study that revealed how infants form different types of bonds with their caregivers. In the 1970s, psychologist Mary Ainsworth developed this protocol to observe how infants respond to separation and reunion with their caregivers. Here's how it worked. An infant and their caregiver were placed in a room with toys. After a few minutes, the caregiver would leave the room and a stranger would enter. Then, the caregiver would return. Researchers observed how the infants responded to both the separation and the reunion. What they discovered was groundbreaking. Infants displayed distinct patterns in how they attached to their caregivers, leading to the identification of different attachment styles. Let's break down the 3 key attachment styles identified through the Strange Situation, and a bonus style that was later added by researchers Mary Main and Judith Solomon a few decades later in 1990. First up is secure attachment. Infants with secure attachment showed distress when their caregiver left, but were comforted when they returned. They used the caregiver as a secure base to explore the environment, knowing they had a safe person to return to. Infants who showed insecure avoidant attachment demonstrated little distress when the caregiver left and tended to avoid them upon return. They didn't seek much comfort, often appearing emotionally detached. In insecure resistant or ambivalent attachment, infants with this style were highly distressed when the caregiver left and had difficulty being comforted upon their return. They might cling to the caregiver but also resist comforting, showing mixed emotions. The fourth style that was characterized later is referred to as disorganized attachment. Infants with disorganized attachment show confused or contradictory behaviors, like approaching the caregiver but then freezing or displaying fear. This style is often linked to abuse, neglect, or trauma, and indicates a lack of clear attachment strategy. These attachment styles have become pretty popular in terms of how we understand ourselves in the context of relationships. But here's something you might not have heard before. Attachment styles aren't universal. They can look very different across cultures, and they may have looked very different for our early ancestors. There's been considerable cultural variation in the distributions of attachments that have diverged from Ainsworth's original findings. In Japan, Keiko Takahashi replicated the strange situation with Japanese families in 1986. This study found that Japanese infants often show higher levels of insecure resistant attachment and didn't demonstrate insecure avoidant attachment. In Japanese families, close physical proximity between infants and caregivers is highly valued, even more than in Western cultures. This distribution of attachment styles may not be because these infants are insecure, but because separation is rare in their culture, making it more distressing. In contrast, German studies by Grossman and colleagues, also in the 1980s, found a far higher percentage of infants with avoidant attachment than Ainsworth's work. German parents tend to encourage independence from an early age. This cultural norm is connected to those higher rates of insecure avoidant attachment because those infants appeared emotionally detached in the strange situation. But in this context, it's not necessarily a sign of poor attachment, it reflects cultural values around self-reliance. Additionally, Sarah Hardy's 2009 book Mothers and Others in the popular press, and the 2013 academic book Attachment Reconsidered: Cultural Perspectives on Western Theory outline how anthropological evidence related to our early ancestors, as well as studies of non-Western cultures and modern hunter-gatherer communities, demonstrate that children who grow up with multiple caregivers, not just their mothers, can grow up not only feeling secure, but also develop more enhanced capacities to view the world from multiple perspectives. When a child's raised by a village, sometimes they form attachments to multiple people. Our understanding of attachment when it comes to our entire species now goes far beyond the work of Ainsworth and the strange situation. These cultural differences remind us that attachment behaviors are shaped not just by caregivers, but by our broader social and cultural context as we grow. And here's where it gets really interesting. The attachment patterns we develop as infants don't just affect our childhood. They can shape our relationships throughout our life. Let's take a look at John Bowlby's attachment theory and see how it explains child development with implications for adult relationships, emotional health, and even brain development. But first, let's do an attention check. Which of the following best describes a child with secure attachment? A. They ignore their caregiver after separation. B. They are distressed when the caregiver leaves, but comforted upon return. C. They show no emotion when the caregiver leaves or returns. Or D. They refuse to explore the environment, even when the caregiver is present. If you picked B, you're exactly right. A securely attached child is distressed when the caregiver leaves, but easily comforted when they return. They use the caregiver as a secure base for exploration. So far, we've seen how attachment develops in both animals and humans, through Harlow's monkeys, Ainsworth's strange situation, and how different cultures approach caregiving. But what ties all of this together? Attachment theory. This theory was developed by psychologist John Bowlby. It doesn't just explain how we form bonds as children, it reveals how those early attachments shape our entire lifespan, influencing everything from romantic relationships to our ability to cope with stress. Bowlby argued that attachment isn't just an emotional preference, it's an evolutionary necessity. From an evolutionary perspective, young children are biologically predisposed to form strong bonds with caregivers to ensure their survival. Think about it this way. Human infants are completely dependent on caregivers for food, protection, and emotional support. Without secure attachment, a child's chance of survival, especially in the environments that Homo sapiens evolved in, would have been slim. This need for attachment isn't just about survival in the short term. Bowlby believed that secure attachments provide the foundation for healthy emotional development and the ability to form trusting relationships throughout life. One of the key concepts here is the idea of the secure base. A caregiver who provides consistent support and emotional security becomes a child's anchor, allowing them to confidently explore the world, knowing that they have a safe place to return to. Imagine a toddler at a playground. They might wander off to explore the slides and the swings, but they'll keep checking back to make sure their caregiver is nearby. That sense of security gives them the confidence to explore, learn, and grow. And this doesn't stop in childhood. As adults, we still seek secure bases in our relationships, people we can rely on during challenging times, who give us the confidence to take risks and face life's uncertainties. And this is where it gets personal. The attachment patterns that we develop in childhood often carry over into our adult relationships. So what do those attachment styles that we discussed in the context of Mary Ainsworth's work look like in adulthood? Adults with secure attachment are comfortable with intimacy and independence. They trust their partners, communicate openly, and handle conflict constructively. Adults with insecure avoidant attachment might struggle with emotional closeness, often avoiding developing deep connections or withdrawing when relationships become too intimate. Adults with insecure resistant or ambivalent attachment may be clingy or overly dependent in relationships. They fear abandonment and often seek constant reassurance from their partners. Disorganized attachment, which we discussed as often being linked to trauma or abuse in childhood, often leads to adults with a difficulty trusting others, displaying conflicting behavior in relationships, or struggling with emotion regulation. Understanding your own attachment style can be a powerful tool for personal growth, helping you to recognize patterns in your relationships and work towards healthier connections. And attachment doesn't just influence our relationships, it plays a major role in our mental health. Secure attachment is linked to better emotional regulation, lower anxiety, and greater resilience in the face of stress. Insecure or disorganized attachments are associated with higher risk of depression, anxiety disorders, and relationship difficulties later in life. For example, people with disorganized attachment styles might have trouble managing their emotions, leading to struggles with mental health or difficulties in forming stable relationships. And recent research has shown that secure attachment doesn't just shape our emotions, it can actually influence how our stress systems develop. Secure attachments help regulate the development of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, a system responsible for managing our stress. When children have secure, responsive caregivers, their stress response systems develop in balanced ways, making them better equipped to handle challenges later in life. In contrast, children who experience neglect or inconsistent caregiving may develop hyperactive or dysregulated stress responses, making them more vulnerable to anxiety and other mental health challenges. Let's pause to reflect. Think about your own relationships, whether with your family, friends, or romantic partners. Do you find it easy to trust and connect with others? Do you tend to pull away when things get too close? Do you find yourself worrying about being abandoned or needing constant reassurance? Understanding your own attachment style isn't just about labeling yourself. It's about recognizing patterns and finding ways to build healthier, more secure connections. Today, we took a deep dive into the world of attachment, exploring how early bonds shape our emotional lives from infancy to adulthood. Here's some key ideas I'd like you to walk away with. Lorenz introduced the idea of imprinting in geese. Harlow's monkey experiments revealed that emotional comfort, not just food, is critical for healthy attachment. Monkeys preferred the comfortable cloth mother over the wire mother that provided nourishment, highlighting the importance of contact comfort. Mary Ainsworth's strange situation and later work identified 4 key attachment styles: secure, avoidant, resistant, and disorganized, all understood by how infants respond to separation and reunion with caregivers. These attachment styles can vary across cultures and influence our relationships throughout life. Then we reviewed Bowlby's attachment theory. It emphasized that secure attachments provide a safe base for exploration and are essential for emotional health and relationship stability in adulthood. Attachment doesn't just shape our emotions, it can even influence how our brain develops and how we cope with stress. Before we wrap up, let's test your knowledge with a couple of review questions. What did Harlow's research with infant monkeys reveal about attachment? A. Monkeys formed stronger bonds with the mother that provided food. B. Attachment is primarily based on genetic inheritance. C. Monkeys preferred a soft surrogate mother even when it didn't provide nourishment. Or D. Attachment behaviors in monkeys had no long-term physiological consequences. If you chose C, you're spot on. Harlow's monkeys clung to the cloth mother for comfort, even though it didn't provide food, showing that emotional security plays a central role in attachment. According to Bowlby's attachment theory, which of the following best defines a secure base? Is it A, a set of instructions for parenting provided in early childhood education? B, a caregiver who offers freedom with little involvement. C, a reliable source of support that enables a child to explore the world with confidence. Or D, a peer group that promotes independence during adolescence. If you chose C, great job. A secure base is all about having someone dependable, a safe, emotional anchor that empowers exploration and growth. To be human is to reach for connection, not just for survival, but for comfort, safety, and the permission to explore. From Harlow's monkeys to Ainsworth's infants, we saw that attachment is more than just affection. It is a nervous system regulation, a blueprint for trust, a model for how we relate, not just to others, but to ourselves. And while attachment styles can echo throughout life, they're not immutable. They evolve just like us. So the next time you seek closeness or push it away, pause. Ask yourself, what am I reaching for? What am I protecting? Thanks for sticking with me today. As always, stay curious, stay resilient, and above all, live life in flux. I'll see you in our next lecture.